Welcome to the second panel of the day on e-governance. And I don't know if it's a fun topic or not, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a fun discussion because we have a fun crowd together. And here in the studio with me is Kuuskemaa, who is the head of business strategy and E-Residency. And then on the Zoom, we have Sikho Msomi from On Point Communications, but we're several other hats as well. We have Lavish Mawuena Mensah joining us from the organization called EGIGFA, and Jonas Tesfu from Pangea Trust, Pangea Accelerator. Everybody wave. I think it's perhaps the first time you guys are together in the same virtual space, same space, but I'm pretty sure that you have touched points with some of you before. So perhaps to the very beginning, I would like everyone to introduce themselves a little bit and tell what's connecting you to this e-governance topic, what makes you an ambassador. And we start with Mats because he's right here.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me. So I'm Mats. I'm from Estonia's E-Residency program, and we're in a way an extension of Estonia's e-government services. Because in the 1990s, 2000s, Estonia sorted out most of its citizens' problems, and then we had an idea that why don't we open our e-governance systems to the outside world and see what happens. And essentially, anyone can go online, apply for this card, and people can set up EU-based companies 100% online and run them from anywhere in the world. And we're quite new to Africa, but very excited about it because we opened our second pickup point on the African continent this year, and this is in Johannesburg. But of course, we see excitement. We see, startups expanding all over the place. So we're really looking for the long-term perspective there.
Super. I'm a huge fan of E-Residency myself. Jonas, next.
Everyone, my name is Jonas Tesfu. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Pangea Accelerator. We are one of the leading startup innovation ecosystems in East Africa, where we operate mainly in Kenya, now in Ethiopia, Somalia, and other countries. I find this topic super relevant because as it comes to startups and making them successful, e-governance plays a big role, and what government can do to facilitate for nourishing growth. So I think this topic is great, and looking forward to having it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas. Also a man of many hats, I think. Next one is Sikho Msomi.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, can you hear me, Mo?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Unfortunately, if you look at our panel today, it's all male, and that speaks volumes to the change or the gaps that still exist. And I think we'll touch on a point on that during our discussion. A bit about myself. I think apart from being involved in a number of social impact ventures, I'm founder of On Point Communications, as you rightly said, Code Africa. I'm also a chairperson of one of the largest business associations in Southern Africa that contributes to, I think, largely to the economic trajectory of the region. If you're looking at about 100 to 150 companies that employ about between 15 to 20,000 people. I also consult for local and national government ministries and departments, as well as the entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystem in the higher education here in South Africa. And around e-governance, I'm a member of the Internet Society, an organization that works in addressing digital divides, which is one which I just pointed out in the beginning, and promotes open development and digital inclusion. Before I give the microphone to my other panelists, I just want to recognize my life partner and our three amazing boys. I think they're a real inspiration for the work that I do. And they're able to hold space for me to be involved in a number of projects and initiatives such as these. Thank you.
Thank you. Women play important role in everyone's lives. Thank you. Lavish, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. For me, we live in a world of uncertainties, and here am I. I'm stepping in for Raymond Mamata, who is the president of EGIGFA. For me personally, COVID brought me into this space. I'm an internet or IT fanatic. I love to look at things happening in the internet space. And during COVID, I was exposed to internet society, and then I came into my own, where I found Ghana SIG, that is Ghana School of Internet Governance, of which I became a full fellow in 2020, joining other bodies in the space of the internet ecosystem. And here am I, an advocate now, working with EGIGFA as the programs manager in terms of finance. So I'm happy to be on this space to talk more or do what we do best in terms of advocacy research, in embodying e-governance and internet governance for Africa Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's a lot of different countries together here, and especially because of the topic, I think more or less like on top of the organizations we're all involved in, we also represent our countries. So we have Ghana, we have Kenya, we have South Africa, and of course we have Estonia here in the room today. One of the first things that I wanted to quickly touch upon is I understand that the countries are in different places when it comes to the e-governance and e-solutions for its citizens. But there surely must be an initiative that you really, really like in your own country and that you see has been like this, making citizens' lives significantly easier. And I think I will go to Mats, and we have a lot to brag about, I think. And perhaps it's also, I don't know, Go ahead.
Yeah, what I would say is that, first of all, e-government is never ready. You know, you need to keep building on it, you need to keep improving on it, you need to look at the experience that people are having. So it's always measured and improved, and there are always, you know, things we can do to improve it. One of the recent things Estonia has done is a data embassy, because, you know, the more you have online, the bigger the cyber threats. Estonia has experienced cyber attacks in the past. So we have a data backup in Luxembourg. So if something would happen, we could go back and retrieve data. That's one thing. The other example, actually, recent years, is these so-called invisible services. So, for example, if you get a child in Estonia, now the only thing you have to do is register the child, and then you sort of get like a ticking thing. You know, you can basically get state support and other services. You don't have to apply for each thing on itself. So yeah, these are two examples.
I think it's very cool. Like, I had my kids way back had to go to all the places, stand in line with like a baby carriage, and then just apply for everything in person. So it's definitely something that I appreciate as well. Yeah, but Sikho, I think when we spoke with you before, you mentioned that South Africa is very good at revenue services and collecting taxes. Something else you appreciate? Or?
Thanks, Mari. Yes, look, I think as Mats has just mentioned, it's really about value creation and just the addition that has to the lives of people, of citizens particularly. In South Africa, I mean, we are celebrating 25 years on the adoption of our constitution, which is a great symbol, if I have to say, of democratic freedom and expression. However, how that translates to initiatives in e-governance is still questionable. I think comparatively speaking, through the region, South Africa is still leading with many countries like Mauritius, Lesotho, and they've made notable moves, I think, in investing in technology infrastructure, enabling near universal internet access, for instance, but also creating credible legal frameworks. And this obviously has created an enabling environment for e-governance. I mean, I think across multiple verticals, whether it's justice, whether it's education, health, and as mentioned and discussed earlier in our conversation, tax and revenue collection services. But also the other vertical is small business development, and how government has really made it or tried to make it easy for people to open and start businesses.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Jonas, perhaps you represent different countries, but what is something that you appreciate, the countries that you can speak about?
Yeah, I think in Kenya the e-citizen system is been very helpful. It enables you to do tax payment, register for companies, and other kind of like government services. I think there's still some work to do or to be done, but at least that's been one clear area where you can see a lot of progress. I've also worked a bit in Mauritius. Mauritius is ranked #1 on the continent. They have, I would say, really taken a high priority on e-governance services, where you can do a lot online, where you don't need to visit any offices, or more this paperless aspect. In Kenya, they still like the stamped. I don't know why. It's not only in Kenya, in many African countries, but any solutions that doesn't require stamps, I'm very positive towards. Yeah.
I don't even know what the stamps stand for. Can you elaborate a little bit? What are the stamps for, or like what's the stamp system?
Oh no, you need stamps for everything. Like I was in Somalia now, in Mogadishu, and as I was going through migration, I had the invitation letter because I was speaking at Mogadishu Tech Summit, but it didn't have a stamp, and that was like a big problem. So they had to send a new invitation with the stamp, and suddenly it was great.
Oh wow!
I don't know what difference the stamp makes, but it's a lot of stamps in processes specifically that has to do with government.
I get it. Thank you, Lavish. On behalf of Ghana and perhaps some of the other countries that you have the experience in.
Yes, thank you. Personally, Ghana, you would say that the e-governance is a whole new greenfield for us. However, we have made some tries, of which I have personally tested some of the services like online passport application. And in recent times, tax payment are really done online, where you have to file your tax, everything online, payment made online. And it all stemmed from the mobile interoperability framework that was set up, which is very essential to e-governance. And one other thing which is currently ongoing is the merging of the biodata of individuals. So the Ghana card being fused with the SNIT numbers. So people, because we need this digital identity, we are working on that to make sure that everybody is covered. So we are really working hard on that. So there are a number of activities which are now being worked on globally. That is in terms of passport, in terms of tax, in terms of digital address system, trying to put everything on the map, operations of insurance, schools coming to learn through the e-learning portal and so on. So all these things are some of the developments that are happening in the space of in the e-governance or internet space. Thank you.
Thank you. You sort of mentioned it also, but I would actually like to go back to it.
Okay.
But before you can actually start building the e-governance services efficiently, and that question goes now to everybody, but we're going to start with Lavish because you're on now anyway. What are some of the fundamentals you think should be on place before going forward, before developing these services forward? What are some of the fundamental key infrastructure or whatever factors that need to be in place before you can develop the other services?
Okay, so
Key things, identity.
Sure. Key things, exactly. The identity is penultimate. That is where it stems from, because nobody is in the vacuum. It starts from the human being. So the biodata part is very essential. So Ghana started rolling out the Ghana card, which is now being fused to other identity cards like the SNITs, your health insurance, other cards which individuals use, driver's license, passport. All these things are now being tried to connect so that there will be a seamless interaction of government agencies in this light. Then when we talk about this, the money comes to fall. And hence Ghana placed the e-government interoperability framework, which is also fundamental to this, so that as we talk about the people, we talk about the money as well. And that serves the platform for banks to interrelate, individuals to send transactions. For me, example, I don't remember the last time I really stepped into the banking hall, which is a good thing to talk about. So it stems from that digital identity, then we move on from there.
And that's already like significant progress from like a personal point of view, having your banking done online. Sikho, again, South Africa perhaps has already some of these fundamentals in place, as you mentioned. What do you think is still missing?
Thanks, Mari, and good to know that Ghana is making strides there. Because I mean, looking at best practice in e-governance, for instance, across Africa, I think notably the development of e-voting in Cabo Verde or Cape Verde, as it's known, as well as what Lavish has said, that there's a move towards integrated information systems. I think in South Africa, we are leading, but a great deal still needs to be done to cover a whole lot of ground. I think from a data perspective, we still need to work to unlock the benefits of e-governance. I think whether it's increasing efficiencies, whether it's improving citizen involvement in processes and decision-making, or even just increasing trust for investors. I think the digital dividends still need to materialize. And based on that, I think if you look at a beautiful quote from our Nobel Peace Prize laureate, I think it was on Friday, Maria Ressa, who spoke about truth and trust. And I think the key there is, how do you build trust to make sure that everyone in the system is working in an environment where there is trust. So everything that needs to happen is tools that can somehow increase the level of trust within the system that we're building. In this instance, we're building countries, we're building relationships multilaterally, but through the tools that we are providing for citizens, how does that actually improve trust in those relationships? So I think that's very important.
I think trust is the key word here when you think of e-governance services, right? Trust, accountability, transparency, everything has to be there before people can trust, before you can trust it, and before you can take it accountable. Jonas, do you want to add up on something?
Yeah, I mean, just want to build on trust. I think with transparency comes a lot of benefits, trust being one of them, but also if you look at problems around corruption and things like that, And I think if you look at what's happened in Rwanda, where they've really been focusing a lot on e-governance and services now being run on transparent platform, you also see a reduction of corruption. So I think also there's, that is something that should be mentioned. And if you look at areas such as land registry, for example, that's one area that I would love to see, full. Yeah, I mean, it would really simplify, because you have a lot of problems just connected, at least here in Kenya, connected to who owns the land deeds. Like they're like, one of the biggest problems with like renewable energy has nothing to do with the solar panels. It has to do with the land that it's on. And if you actually did buy it or have the lease for it, or maybe there was somebody else who had the lease and what you had was a fake, because there's no transparent system where you can have a full overview. So cost of doing business becomes very high because you have trust issues. So, yeah.
But that's insane thinking about it, that problems like this still exist, right? You would think it's clear who owns what. It's just, it sounds like out of this world. For me, like, I think my personal appeal with e-governance and e-services is definitely this going borderless thing. Perhaps, Mats, do you want to add up on what we were discussing right now? What are the key fundamentals that you feel need to be in place before you can go further?
I would say Estonia's system, our luck in a way, is that our first of all, our e-governance system is a lot of different databases that are interconnected. And there is one sort of broad X road, it's called, one road that sort of they all talk to each other. And there's a rule that technically the government should ask you one question once. So if your name is saved in the population registry, everyone else, every other database, if you go check your health record, the health record should ask the population registry for your name details each time. And that makes it more secure because, first of all, you can't, if you start stealing data, then there will be, unusual patterns happening. And also it's just more efficient in a way, because the big mistake that a lot of countries in Europe have invested a lot more money into e-governance than Estonia, but they've created silos. So they create like databases that don't talk to each other, spend all the money, and that is sometimes the problem. And by the way, a similar system that one Estonian company, Cybernetica, has done in Namibia as well. That's the one thing we can learn from, definitely.
Mm-hmm. So not starting to develop things separately, just but looking at it as a whole, like interconnected thing, right? Very cool. So the next thing that I wanted to get into is, was already mentioned, of course, the government and the politics. We can't go without the public sector. We have to make sure that the public sector and the government is sincere, not corrupted or anything. But still, I think it's like this misconception. And also when I look at the hackathon ideas, I often, when I look at the e-governance ideas, I just look at them, a lot of them are quite generic. And when you read it, it's like, oh, we have so much corruption, we have to involve the people somehow better. And it's a lot of blame on the government. But I do think that the private sector plays a huge role in pushing some of these initiatives forward. And perhaps I'm again coming perhaps in a privileged place or privileged point of view or thinking, but I do think that sometimes it's the individuals, active entrepreneurs, people who believe in certain things, technology, that are being the pushers of driving the government. What do you think? And can you bring up some of the good examples, perhaps?
Yeah, I think Estonia is very specific because we're a 1.3 million country, and we're a country where I think there's a lot of interchange between government and private sector. Mm-hmm. So you really need both of them. You can't do e-governance without government. The government people have to be on board. But it's really, it's also what we look back at the 1990s, people, actually the populace had no idea what's going to come. They adopted to the e-services very fast, but they didn't know what's going to happen. So it was all, in a series of experiments in a way. But I think what was said earlier that, the public support is very important even for us now with almost 30 years in e-governance services, still the public trust is something you still need to work for, and you still need to work for data security, cyber security issues. If someone, some data is stolen, for example, it really reduces the public trust on it. And I just want to mention what Jonas said earlier on corruption. One big thing is actually putting procurements online. If you put procurements online on a safe system, then you can't give the contract to your best friend. You really can't, because it's all up there.
Yeah, go ahead. From the procurement side, I'm actually I can go on and on about it, because yes, I think Estonia is doing pretty good, but at the same time, not all the public sectors who are putting the procurements up don't make their voting system or super transparent, for instance. So there's still some issues of standardizing the process. That's what I believe. And now, coming from the company who works in a private and public sector, I still have to say, until this point, I meet big organizations, like international organizations, that are quite corrupt. No matter if they claim to have this public procurement system, if it is online, it's still corrupted. It's still so corrupted that we have flagged a couple of the organizations in Ukraine that are active in Ukraine that we don't put the tenders in. And some of them are internationally known names that I can't mention at the moment. No, but I was just in a recent dispute about not submitting a tender because it was clearly fixed.
No, you're fully right, but that's the thing. E-governance on its own doesn't work. You can have a very autocratic country, for example, that does e-governance. It's still a very autocratic country. Yeah. So in the same way, it can support good governance. But we also need an independent court system where to dispute the procurements, for example. Yeah.
So again, the transparency and understanding the whole process, right? But coming back to you guys, what's your view on how much can the private sector play a role, and perhaps I don't know, one very active entrepreneur who's this visionary believer, very strong, very smart, navigating actively the public and private sector. How much can they actually make a difference in perhaps more conservative places? Anyone can raise a hand. Yeah.
Okay. Go for it, Jonas. Yeah.
Jonas, go ahead.
All right. No, I just want to mention the E-Citizen that I mentioned before in Kenya. That was actually created by entrepreneurs, and that was it started off with tax collection and showcasing how that could be simplified, and then they got government buy-in, and that's how the whole journey started. With all these services that are now on the E-Citizen platform. So I think it's definitely possible. I think the problem is probably around if you want to do it, how do you fund it? Mm-hmm. Is it through government? Is it private sector, like investor coming through, and so on? And also how do you, as an entrepreneur, show that the government actually wants this? So that there is a clear, customer on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Sikho, from South Africa's point of view, from your point of view.
Yeah. Look, as Mats was saying, political will is the main driver of transformation in e-governance, and without it, unfortunately, not much can be achieved. I think there is a great deal of private sector players in South Africa. For instance, banks are doing well in trying to bring services, even governments integrating with with government-related services as an add-on to their clients. For instance, I think I did mention to you that I spent about four hours during this week in a queue just to renew my car license, for instance. But there's a particular bank or two banks in South Africa that you can actually do that through, and that's a add-on for most of their clients. But I think there are other sector players that are working hard with government in increasing the rate of FDI in the region, and just working to increase, as what Jonas was saying, increase that transparency, and again, working against corruption. And unfortunately, it also exists in the private sector, as you mentioned, Mari, that it doesn't only exist in the public sector, but I think most importantly, the private sector as engines of the economy, we are working to create more jobs and ultimately a broader tax base, which should translate to economic growth and development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Lavish, do you want to add on to that?
Yes, I also think, and I agree with Sikho's point, that the private sector is really pushing the government to have that platform, to have that interaction, because it stems from the private sector, and then the government. E-governance basically is about the government putting in place those measures so that private sectors and the government can interact to help the citizens. Here in Ghana, I just want to talk about one of these services where customers or clients or citizens are able to go online and buy things, where the monies, because of the banking system, the private sector having the banking system and helping people to do banking transactions has made it easy for people to now purchase as well. So an example is a Jumia. Jumia is an online platform for Ghanaians to make purchases, not really going to the markets there and then have their items at the click of a button. And it is forcing the government to also create that environment. The identity we spoke about, very essential, businesses registering such that they can be displayed on these platforms and then do their various transactions, buying and selling. The government is being pushed by these private sectors to bring to fore this, as well as international bodies, of which I would speak of GIZ really pushing and supporting Ghana in most of its activities. The recent one is the Digital Innovation Week. It was spectacular and the first time for Ghana. So yes, the private sector is really into this. So private and public partnership is helping bringing this to fore.
Mm-hmm. Glad to hear. I'm glad that in general that you agree, because I also been in the conversations where there's a lot of thinking that it's just the government, it's just the politics that are driving this or should be driving this thing forward. But unfortunately, there are fortunately, it has many different aspects, and it has to involve the private sector, in whatever form, whether it's the financial sector that comes to play or something else. Yeah, go ahead, Lavish.
Yes, the private sector is doing most of the things. Government, because of its bureaucratic processes, they fear, and then it takes time for them to implement some decisions. But the private man or entity are ready to get going. They are really business oriented, and aside the profit fact, they want to see things happening, and they understand the scope of letting things come to fore and making things easy for the citizens. And hence, the government are forced to adapt, or let me say adopt the things that are being done in the private sector. And then this brings about the harmony, having consensus to see the way forward, to create that platform for the private man to help the economy grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jonas.
No, I fully agree with everything that's been said by the other panelists in terms of the importance of government. But I just wanted to mention that I think there's one opportunity where you can lower the barrier of entry when it comes to digital governance, and that's actually if you look at the development sector. So I know, for example, in Norway, they're looking at, they're calling it like the digital common codes, but basically they're looking at digital infrastructure that they spend a lot of money on and putting it open source, and then other countries can now copy paste it. And I think that could be very interesting, because if you see other countries doing the same, then as a government in an African country, it may just come down to actually just having a menu of options and then just saying, we pick this. And that's a lot easier than having to build it and having a vision and a blueprint and so on. So I think I think that's pretty interesting what's happening in that space. So I just wanted to mention that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly expand on the e-banking part that I think Sikho and Lavish you both mentioned. In Estonia initially, when e-governance was just started, it was used a lot for access to e-government services. So that's something you can build on.
Yeah, actually, I still use it. Yeah, I still use it. It's like people are stuck in their old ways. When you start using it, I just for the taxes, I also enter through my bank and then pay the taxes in 3 minutes. Huge shout out to the Estonian Tax and Customs Board, so that you can submit your taxes in 3 minutes. That's my appreciation token of the day. Yeah. Moving on from the government and private sector collaboration, and I really like this this idea that Jonas brought in the conversation, that often it's not about building the whole thing, it's opening what you have, you know, and then for the other countries to take in bits and pieces, or the governments take bits and pieces that they need and adapting it to their own circumstances. So this is also like a cool thing to see. But now, because this time is going insanely fast, we have today a full-on hackathon pitching and jury and evaluation to go on. I just want to end it, not end it, but the last big question, perhaps for everyone to answer, is this more of a dreamy, forward-looking thing? What are the future trends that you see in your country or in the continent? And if you want to dream big, really big, what would you like to happen? Perhaps Sikho?
Thanks, Mari. And Jonas is making reference to, I think, essentially what they refer to as the Nordic way, you know, of building trust-based systems and opening them up to others. And I think it's a fascinating case, really, that the Nordic region is translating and assisting that. I think the way that the whole region, for instance, has been able to create a trust-based system, particularly cross-country and throughout the region, is just remarkable. And mine really for the future of Africa is to say, how do we create such levels of high trust, not only across countries, but among citizens? I think one of the projects that we're working on when it comes to identity and providing identity service for those that are marginalized is that those that are marginalized themselves do not trust the services that are being offered by government, for instance, or by development agencies. So there's that need to have that conversation to say, along the provision of such e-services, how do we also, as a people, embed trust in those conversations or those solutions? So I think for the future is to say, how do we build e-enabled tools that have some sort of trust embedded in the exercise? How does that exercise, apart from just parachuting a solution, how do we actually build a solution from the ground up, where people start recognizing and appreciating the services themselves? So I think a trust embedded e-tool that crosses all sectors, whether it's private or public, is something that we should look at. How that looks like, I'm not sure, but perhaps, as Jonas was saying, that borrowing from the Nordic way of doing things, perhaps, and also Estonia, that could be a case to follow.
Jonas, do you want to go on next? Just perhaps add on something Sikho already said.
Yeah, I think Sikho basically covered everything. Maybe we can add the residency aspect of it. I think that's something that Estonia does, which I think is amazing, both from E-Residency and how you can become e-resident regardless of where you're from, or actually can register a company. You can become a EU company and register online. I don't know if many know it out there, but it can actually have tremendous disruptive effects. But I would like to see other African countries operating with a similar mindset and enabling, for example, Ghanaian, a Kenyan startup could become a Ghanaian e-citizen or a South African e-citizen, and create these other ways of enabling business and trade, because we know that many times it's regulatory aspect that is prohibiting trade. Also, Africa has a very young population. The median age is 19, and it's going very digital. So I think also it makes sense to build infrastructure digitally, because I think it's a lot cheaper and more efficient and more transparent. So therefore, I also think this should be a big carrot for African countries to really trying to take a lead in this space. Yeah, thank you.
The population is young. Young people are so much smarter and more digital than the old folks, so it makes sense to build it digitally from now. This going borderless thing, coming back to you, Mats, this is my personal appeal about all these services. And at the moment, I think 20% of the new companies in Estonia and 1/3 of the startups are e-residents. So it's like a pretty cool example of how you can do business borderlessly. Where do you see perhaps this is heading, your future dreams?
First of all, Estonia's limitation is that we're a 1.3 million country, and we have e-governance services more or less done. We need to improve it still, but I think how we can go forward is really how can we make a difference in the world, and e-residency is really one of the things, and we're really excited about how, for example, Estonia is suddenly relevant in some African countries who wouldn't otherwise know us. But one new thing, by the way, that I didn't mention before is we have e-notary services thanks to COVID. So I recently sold a house online. Fully online, and that's something that's really good for startups if they want to raise funds or have a holding company, for example, in Europe. It's so much easier to do it with e-residency. So that's one really nice thing. But otherwise, it's just that we want to scale the program. We want to make it, build the ecosystem, and we see such a great opportunity in Africa because so much talent there, so much is happening there, and we're happy to be part of that.
Yeah, if I can just add there, I think Mats, if you look at Estonia, for instance, with your 1 million odd people, it will be good to see how we can scale the same solution. I think South Africa has got about 75 million citizens and counting, because most of them are undocumented citizens who come from various or neighboring countries. So it'll be interesting to see how we can actually scale the solution that has worked for 1 million odd people to actually see how we can actually work for a country that at the moment, I think we're sitting at about 80 plus million people. So looking forward to see how we can work and accelerate that and provide the kind of services that, for instance, e-residency is providing for Estonians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think our country and the fact that we're small. There are a couple of other small African countries like Namibia, not in terms of the square mileage, but just the people. I think it's always easier to do it in smaller countries. But how do you scale it, and how much do you really have to adapt? What bits and pieces you can take? What do you have to let go and adapt? That's the question, I think, as well, because you can't take one solution that fits all. That's sure. Lavish.
Yes, thank you. What I want to see in the near future is the smart cities, which we have heard of in China and then South Korea, where people can travel to places or a city moving through, that's the traffic situation and so on. But for Ghana, I'm looking forward to e-learning becoming e-learning, fully fitted, that people will be at home and then study. People can do everything in terms of education online. I'm hoping to see that, but it stems from advocacy, training, consensus building, of which EGIGFA is here to do, of which I'm a testimony myself. I came into this space as a result of EGIGFA convening Ghana 6 School of Internet Governance, where people are trained and educated on this internet space, having more knowledge into it. And it is one of the stop or the locks to people not growing in the space of or holding up the e-governance concept. You can't talk of e-governance and then leave out the UN e-governance survey report, which is published every 2 years, of which we have people who report or collect data here in Ghana, that is representatives of EGIGFA collecting data to help bring or have understanding of how things are thriving when we talk of e-governance. As we are talking about forward to, I want to chip in what are the drawbacks as well. In recent times here in Ghana, we hear of e-levy, which is an issue that cropped up in Tanzania, Uganda, Cote d'Ivoire, and so on. They are all issues which, if are not handled clearly through consensus building, would cause people to retract rather than coming up to accept what is happening. Uganda, we know that when they started the e-levy by 1%, now through the people's outcry, it has been reduced to 0.5%. That is to say that I don't know which African country is running on such a pedal above the 1%. But here we are in Ghana, it is one of the trending issues. It is sad that we put the political emotions in there, and hence when it comes, we just take it like that and say, hey, this is it. It is my party which is bringing it up. Let's get it. But it is about consensus. Let's listen to what people are saying. Let's look out there, what is happening out there, and make them blueprints or platforms for us to learn from. And that would help us to know what to do in terms of e-governance and help it have that, get to that level we want it to get to. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lavish, for that insight also. Sikho, you raised your hand quickly. One last remark.
Yeah, one last remark. I think linked to what Lavish was just saying and what Jonas was saying as well. I think it'll be interesting looking at the future now, how countries, particularly African countries, with the fast acceleration adoption of some of them, of digital currencies, what that will actually have an impact on e-governance, for instance, for most countries. I really would like to see how the impact or how digital currencies are going to impact e-governance, for instance. But also, I think the pronouncement or the excitement around 4IR, I think we are steadily moving away from that. We are in a stage where, again, going back to trust, where we now need to be looking at Society 5.0 and what that actually means, because trust is embedded in it. So how do we move beyond just accelerating progress through digital means or technology, but solutions that actually change the lives of people?
Thank you. I think to this very last thing, I'm gonna try to end it on a very high note, and if you think of one word that the current people who are at the moment working on their e-governance prototype during the hackathon, one word that these people should keep in mind when developing these services. Sikho, what's your word? Just one word. What do they have to pay attention to? I know already. It starts with T.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. Look, I've been a lead mentor throughout the hackathon. Really exciting progress that the teams have worked on. The one word, or I'll say Society 5.0,
Okay.
and look at capturing that.
Jonas.
I'm going to cheat. I'm going to say 2 words, user-centric and integrated.
Very good. Oh, adaptable to all the hackathon solutions. Lavish.
I will talk about data protection and privacy and the security of data.
So many words.
Sorry.
All right. And then Mats.
Yeah, I would say ease. I think the shorter everything is, shorter every application, shorter, less questions you can have, the better.
Make it easy.
Yeah.
Very good. So thank you so much for this nice, future-looking, hopeful discussion for this morning on e-governance. Hope you all have an amazing Sunday. Tune in to watch the lives, tune in to watch the panels. Thank you so much.